Do you ever stop to think about how much energy is all around you? The food you eat, the light in your room are all sources of untapped power. Today, we're going to take a look at the more obscure ways of harnessing energy. Let's get to it. It turns out that onions are more than just the worst part of a lasagna. They can help generate electricity too. An example of this can be seen in the onion processing facility belonging to Gill's Onions. Since 2009, this plant has been converting the remains of their processed produce into methane gas. There are 6 steps to this process. Shred up the onion waste, press the chopped up bits to squeeze the juice out, divert the juice into an oxygen-free chamber called an anaerobic digester, add microbes to convert the juice into methane gas, purify the methane gas, divert the methane to fuel cells that convert the methane into energy. The Gill's Onions website says that they are the first food processing facility in the world to produce ultra-clean energy from onion remains. When they started, this produced up to 600 kilowatts per day, around 40% of their energy needs. Since then, they've also installed a solar photovoltaic system, so it is unclear exactly how much of their energy is still provided by the sacred rite of onion sacrifice. Quite frankly, I'm just glad that someone is finally giving these horrible vegetables what they deserve. You might not have known this, but Sweden once had a law which prohibited the importation of alcohol into the country, forcing all residents to source their drinks locally. This was the case up until 2007, when the European Court of Justice overruled this law, stating that Sweden had no right to bar citizens from importing alcohol from other EU countries. Back when this law was still in place, many people were caught trying to sneak alcohol back into the country. These smugglers would have their alcohol confiscated and taken back to a place called
Linköping,
where it was converted into biogas. In 2006, Swedish authorities confiscated approximately 700,000 liters of alcohol, most of which was converted into biofuel. That's 185,000 gallons for those of you using freedom units. This confiscated fuel helped to power around 1,000 buses and trucks, and the world's first biogas-powered train, while lowering Sweden's overall carbon emissions. 1 quart of pure alcohol is enough to make 1/10 of a gallon of biofuel. I couldn't find any sources that discussed how this practice is implemented today, assuming that it still exists at all. But since the only alcohol that ever gets confiscated by Swedish customs authorities these days are contraband items that don't comply with current regulations, I would have to imagine that the operation has been, at the very least, severely downscaled. Hey, just a heads up, for this next section I have to get a little bit into the intricacies of wireless communication, so try to contain your excitement. Okay, here we go. Radio waves, as well as other wavelengths on the electromagnetic spectrum, can be used to transfer data. This makes it possible to have wireless communication between devices, like Bluetooth connecting your headphones to a laptop, or cellular networks connecting 2 people in a call. Things like the shape of the wave, the frequency, and other characteristics are used to represent data that can be interpreted by a computer. Now, there is a lot more to this, and it can get fairly complicated depending on things like the type of device, encryption, network protocols, etc., but I'm not going to bore you with the nitty-gritty of it all. The important part for you to remember is that today, wireless communication typically involves a lot of signals getting transmitted back and forth by the participants in the conversation. This means that a lot of energy gets wasted as new signals get generated while the quote-unquote old radio waves are never used again. Kind of like how if somebody sent me a letter, I couldn't reuse that paper to write a new letter. I would have to get a new piece of paper to send back a new letter every time I wanted to send a letter back. One way that scientists and engineers are trying to improve this situation is by recycling old radio waves so that there can be uninterrupted wireless connectivity. This would be the equivalent of taking a letter someone else sent me, rearranging all of the words on the piece of paper to read out a new message, and then sending the exact same letter back so that no paper is wasted. How is this possible, you may ask? Well, by covering objects in the environment with a thin film of electromagnetic reconfigurable material. These materials are called reconfigurable intelligent metasurfaces. Rolls right off the tongue. These films are meant to sense the environment and apply customized transformations to radio waves. This new tech might be implemented into the walls of buildings or even smart t-shirts, and hopefully, one day, it will save energy by allowing network operators to recycle existing radio waves so that they can be used in new services, rather than having to constantly generate new signals. We quite literally have all the energy in the world at our disposal. We just have to find a way to harness it and use it effectively. Now, whether or not we'll ever see these innovations being implemented on a global scale, I can't say. But what do you think? Do we have the power?